The moment Dr. James Whitfield saw the X-ray, his blood went cold. He stood there for exactly 3 seconds, which doesn't sound like much until you're in an emergency room, where 3 seconds can mean the difference between life and death. Then he did something that made every nurse, every resident, every medical student in that trauma bay stop what they were doing. He told everyone to leave the room. Not step back, not give him space, leave immediately. And what nobody understood in that moment, what would take another 47 minutes to become horrifyingly clear, was that Dr. Whitfield wasn't trying to protect the patient on that gurney. He was trying to protect everyone else. St. Michael's Medical Center sits in the heart of Philadelphia, a level 1 trauma center that sees everything the city can throw at it. Gunshot wounds on Friday nights, industrial accidents on Monday mornings, the occasional car wrapped around a telephone pole at 3 a.m. when some kid decides texting is more important than watching the road. The staff there have seen it all. Or at least, they thought they had. Dr. James Whitfield had been the attending emergency physician for 11 years. 53 years old, silver threading through his dark hair, the kind of doctor who younger residents both feared and worshipped. He was known for 2 things: an almost supernatural ability to diagnose rare conditions, and an absolute refusal to sugarcoat anything. When Dr. Whitfield told you something was bad, it was bad. When he told you a patient had a chance, they had a chance. The man didn't waste words. The night of October 17th started like any other. The ER was running at about 70% capacity, which is actually manageable for a Thursday. Dr. Whitfield had 3 residents under his supervision that night. Dr. Sarah Kim, a 3rd year who was sharp as a scalpel, but sometimes got tunnel vision on diagnoses. Dr. Marcus Webb, a 2nd year who was good with patients but still learning to trust his instincts. And Dr. Priya Sharma, a 1st year who was terrified of making mistakes, which meant she triple-checked everything. Good residents, all of them. They'd need to be. The charge nurse that night was Linda Vasquez, a 22-year veteran who ran the ER like a general runs a battlefield. She had a 6th sense for when things were about to go sideways, and around 9 p.m, she started getting that feeling. "Something's off tonight," she muttered to the unit secretary, a young guy named Devon who was updating patient boards. "I don't know what, but something." Devon shrugged. "It's a Thursday. Thursdays are always weird." Linda wasn't superstitious. She didn't believe in premonitions or gut feelings that couldn't be explained by experience and pattern recognition. But she'd learned to trust that 6th sense, the one that had been honed by 2 decades of watching people live and die in these halls. She started quietly checking supply closets, making sure the crash carts were fully stocked, confirming that the backup defibrillator batteries were charged, just in case. The ambulance call came in at 10:47 p.m. "St. Michael's, this is Unit 43. We're coming in hot with a male patient, approximately 60 to 65 years old, found unresponsive at the Philadelphia Rail Yard's maintenance facility. Vitals are weird. Heart rate's at 42 and dropping. BP is 90/50. Patient is conscious but disoriented. He keeps saying something about a container. ETA is 7 minutes. Linda grabbed the receiver. "Unit 43, what do you mean by weird vitals? Is this cardiac? Stroke? Trauma?" There was a pause on the other end. Then the paramedic's voice came back, and Linda would later swear there was an edge to it she'd never heard before. "We honestly don't know. We've never seen anything like this. His skin is... I don't know how to describe it. It's like he's burning from the inside out, but he's not. Running a fever. He's cold. Really cold. And he keeps asking us about some container. Says we need to find the container before..." The transmission cut out for a second. "Before what?" Linda pressed. "Before it's too late. Mum, we're coming in hot. Clear us a trauma bay and call poison control. I think this guy got into something he shouldn't have." 7 minutes later, the ambulance doors burst open and everything changed. The patient's name was Walter Henricks, 62 years old. He'd worked at the Philadelphia rail yards for 37 years, starting as a maintenance worker and working his way up to shift supervisor. He was supposed to retire in 18 months. His wife, Margaret, was already picking out cruise destinations. But that future evaporated the moment paramedics wheeled Walter through those doors. Dr. Sarah Kim was the first to see him, and she actually took a step backward. Not from fear, but from pure confusion. Walter Henricks didn't look like any patient she'd ever seen. His skin had a greyish pallor, but there were patches, irregular, spreading patches, where it had turned an angry, mottled red. Not like a rash, more like chemical burns. But there was no blistering, no breakdown of the tissue, just this deep, crimson discoloration spreading across his arms, his neck, creeping up toward his face. "Sir, can you tell me what happened?" Dr. Kim asked, moving alongside the gurney as they wheeled him into Trauma Bay 2. "The paramedic said something about a container." Walter's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was ice cold and stronger than a man with a heart rate of 42 had any right to be. "The container," he whispered, his voice cracking. "South lot, near the old maintenance shed. You have to tell them. It was open. It was already open when I found it." "What was in the container, Mr. Henricks?" "I don't know. I touched it. I shouldn't have touched it. It smelled like the air before a storm, like metal and lightning." His eyes suddenly focused, boring into Dr. Kim's with an intensity that made her stomach drop. "Don't let anyone else touch it. Promise me, whatever you do, don't let anyone else touch it." Then his eyes rolled back and his heart rate dropped to 31. "He's bradycardic and dropping," Dr. Kim shouted. "Get me atropine, 0.5 milligrams, IV, push, now!" Dr. Marcus Webb appeared at her side, grabbing the atropine from a nurse. "What the hell happened to his skin?" "I don't know. Possible chemical exposure. He was talking about some container at the rail yards." "Has anyone called Hazmat?" Dr. Kim's hands froze for just a second. In the chaos of Walter's arrival, in the strangeness of his symptoms, nobody had thought about contamination protocols. Nobody had thought about what might have come in with him. "I'll call," Linda said from the doorway, already pulling out her phone. "But we need to know what we're dealing with. Did he say anything else about what he touched?" The atropine pushed Walter's heart rate up to 48, then 55. Stabilizing, for now. But Dr. Kim noticed something else, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. His temperature was 94.2 degrees. Hypothermic, despite the fact that he'd been inside a heated ambulance for the past 10 minutes and was now under warming blankets. And the red patches on his skin were spreading. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely spreading. "Get Dr. Whitfield," she said quietly. "Now." Dr. James Whitfield had been in the middle of teaching Dr. Sharma how to suture a laceration on a drunk college student who'd fallen through a glass table when Linda found him. One look at her face told him everything he needed to know about the urgency level. "What have we got?" he asked, already stripping off his gloves and heading toward Trauma Bay 2. "Male, 62, possible chemical exposure at the rail yards, unknown substance. His vitals are all over the place, and his skin..." Linda paused, searching for the right words. "You need to see it, Dr. Whitfield. I've never seen anything like it." In 22 years, Linda Vasquez had never said those words. That alone was enough to make Dr. Whitfield walk faster. The moment Dr. Whitfield stepped into that trauma bay, he understood why Linda had been so shaken. Walter Henricks lay on the gurney, eyes closed now, chest rising and falling with shallow, laboured breaths. The red mottling had spread to cover nearly 40% of his visible skin. And there was something else. something that took Dr. Whitfield's breath away. Walter was glowing. Not brightly, not like a light bulb or a neon sign. It was subtle, barely perceptible under the harsh fluorescent lights of the trauma bay. But in the shadows, around the edges of those red patches, there was a faint, sickly luminescence. Like phosphorus. Like something radioactive. "Everyone, stop what you're doing," Dr. Whitfield said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "Dr. Kim, step away from the patient. Dr. Webb, you too, slowly." "Sir?" Dr. Kim's voice was barely a whisper. "What is it?" "I need an X-ray, portable, now, and I need everyone in this room to think very carefully about whether they've touched this patient or anything he touched. Gloves don't count, skin contact." Dr. Webb raised his hand slightly. I helped transfer him from the ambulance gurney. My glove ripped. I didn't think." "Show me your hands." There it was. Barely visible, but undeniable. A small, irregularly shaped patch of reddened skin on Dr. Webb's right palm. Not irritated, not inflamed, just different. Changed. Like the beginning of something terrible. "Marcus," Dr. Whitfield said, using the young resident's first name for the first time anyone could remember, "I need you to stay very calm. We're going to figure this out. But right now, I need you to step over there, away from everyone else, and do not touch anything or anyone. Do you understand?" Dr. Webb's face had gone pale. "We don't know anything yet. That's why I need the X-ray. And someone needs to call the CDC. Right now." The portable X-ray machine was wheeled in 4 minutes later. The radiologic technician, a young woman named Casey who had only been on the job for 8 months, positioned the panel behind Walter's chest while Dr. Whitfield watched from behind the lead shield. "Hold your breath, Mr. Henricks," Casey said softly, though she wasn't sure the patient could hear her anymore. His eyes had been closed for the past several minutes, and his heart rate had stabilized at an eerily steady 44 beats per minute. She pressed the button. And nothing prepared any of them for what appeared on that screen. Dr. Whitfield stood in front of the monitor, and for the first time in 11 years at St. Michael's, his hands began to shake. A human chest X-ray shows bones, soft tissue shadows, the dark spaces of the lungs, the familiar shape of the heart. It's a map Dr. Whitfield had read thousands of times. He knew every landmark, every variation, every abnormality. But this wasn't a chest X-ray. Not anymore. Something was inside Walter Henricks. Multiple somethings. Small, crystalline structures, dozens of them, scattered throughout his lungs, his lymph nodes, his blood vessels. They weren't tumours. They weren't foreign bodies. They were geometric, precise, almost organised. And they were growing. "Dear God," Dr. Whitfield whispered. That was when he told everyone to leave the room. "Out. Everyone, now. This is not a request." "Doctor," Kim started to protest. "Dr. Whitfield, the patient will die regardless of what we do in the next 5 minutes. Everyone else in this room still has a chance, but only if you leave immediately. Go to the decontamination area by the ambulance bay. Strip off all clothing. Use the chemical showers. Do not touch anyone who hasn't been in this room." He turned to Dr. Webb, who was standing frozen in the corner, staring at his own hand. "Marcus, you go first. Move." Now, before I tell you what Dr. Whitfield discovered in those X-ray results, and what it meant for everyone in that hospital, if you're the kind of person who lives for stories like this, hit subscribe. I drop a new one every single day, and trust me, they only get more intense. All right, so those X-ray results. Dr. Whitfield waited until the last person had left the trauma bay before he did something he'd never done in his entire medical career. He pulled out his personal cell phone and called a number he'd memorized 15 years ago but never expected to use. A number given to him by a man named Colonel Richard Harding during a briefing that officially never happened. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. "Identify," said a flat, mechanical voice. "Whitfield, James, Echo 7 clearance. I have a priority Omicron situation at St. Michael's Medical Center, Philadelphia. We need a containment team, and we need them now." There was a pause. Then a different voice came on the line, human this time, alert and businesslike. "Dr. Whitfield, it's been a long time. Tell me what you're looking at." "I'm looking at a patient with what appears to be a Class 4 biological exposure, origin unknown. The substance is crystalline in structure, possibly self-replicating. It's already spread through his lymphatic system and into his bloodstream, and we may have secondary contamination in at least one of my residents." "How many people were in direct contact with the primary patient?" "6, including myself, plus 2 paramedics who transported him." "Where are they now?" "Decontamination showers. I cleared the room." "Good. Listen carefully, Doctor. We're scrambling a team from Fort Detrick. ETA is approximately 90 minutes. Until then, you need to quarantine the entire emergency department. No one in, no one out. And the patient, do you still have a pulse?" Dr. Whitfield looked at the monitor. Walter's heart rate had dropped to 37. The red mottling now covered his entire face. "Barely. Keep him alive if you can, but more importantly, keep him contained. You're cleared for full hazmat protocols. And Dr. Whitfield, whatever you do, do not let anyone else look at that X-ray without protection." The 90 minutes that followed were the longest of Dr. Whitfield's life. The ER was sealed. Patients already being treated were moved to a holding area in the hospital lobby. Staff members who had been on shift but not in the trauma bay were given the choice to leave or stay in a designated clean zone. Most stayed. St. Michael's staff were like that. Meanwhile, the contaminated team, Dr. Kim, Dr. Webb, 2 nurses, Casey the X-ray tech, and 1 paramedic who'd helped unload the gurney, waited in the decontamination area. They'd been scrubbed, re-scrubbed, and draped in paper gowns while their clothes were bagged for analysis. Dr. Webb sat in the corner, staring at his hand. The red patch had grown. It was now the size of a quarter, and he could have sworn. No, he was sure of it. He could feel something moving underneath his skin. "Marcus," Dr. Kim's voice was gentle but strained. "Try to stay calm. The specialists will be here soon." "It's growing, Sarah. I can feel it. It's spreading." "We don't know what it is yet. It could be a localized reaction, an allergic response." "You saw the X-ray. You saw what was inside him." Dr. Webb looked up and there were tears in his eyes. "If that's inside me now, if I brought it home or touched other patients before we knew." His wife, Angela, was 7 months pregnant. Their first child, a little girl they'd already named Emma. I can't let this." Dr. Kim did something that violated every protocol she'd ever learned. She walked across the room and put her hand on Marcus Webb's shoulder. "You will not think about that right now. Whatever this is, we face it together. That's what we do. That's who we are." She didn't know if she believed it. She didn't know if hope was even rational at this point. But she knew that letting Marcus spiral into panic would help no one. And deep down, she knew something else too. If there was contamination in this room, she was almost certainly exposed already. They all were. The team from Fort Detrick arrived at 12:31 a.m. 12 specialists in full positive pressure hazmat suits, led by a woman who introduced herself only as Dr. Matthews. No first name, no handshake, obviously. She reviewed the X-ray on a specially shielded tablet. Dr. Whitfield watched her face through the visor of her suit, looking for any reaction, any sign of recognition. What he saw chilled him to the bone. Recognition. Definite recognition. And something else. Fear. Where exactly did the patient work? Dr. Matthews asked. The Philadelphia Rail Yards, maintenance facility. And what did he say about the container? He said it was already open when he found it. South lot, near the old maintenance shed. He said it smelled like metal and lightning. Dr. Matthews turned to one of her team members. Get a second response unit to those coordinates immediately. Full containment protocols. And find out what the hell a shipping container with that kind of cargo was doing at a civilian rail yard. She turned back to Dr. Whitfield. Doctor, I need you to answer my next question very carefully. Besides the patient and your contaminated staff, has anyone else, anyone at all, entered or exited this emergency department in the past 2 hours? Dr. Whitfield's stomach dropped, because he suddenly remembered something he'd overlooked in the chaos. The patient's wife, Margaret Henricks, she arrived about 40 minutes ago. She wanted to see her husband. Linda, Nurse Vasquez, took her to the family waiting room. Did she have physical contact with the patient? I don't know. I was on the phone. I assumed Linda would keep her in the waiting area. They found the family waiting room empty. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat on the end table. A purse, presumably Margaret's, was tucked under a chair. But no Margaret. She could have gone to the bathroom, Dr. Whitfield said, but he was already moving, scanning the hallway, calling her name. Then Linda Vasquez's voice crackled over the PA system. Doctor, Whitfield to Trauma Bay 2. Immediately. We have a problem. Margaret Henricks had found her way to her husband's bedside. She stood next to the gurney, holding Walter's hand, crying softly. Her back was to the door, and her husband was speaking. His eyes were open, wide open, staring at the ceiling. His lips were moving, but the words coming out didn't sound like English. They didn't sound like any language Dr. Whitfield had ever heard. They sounded like static, like interference on an old radio, like the white noise between stations, somehow shaped into syllables. Mrs. Henricks, Dr. Whitfield said softly, stepping forward. Margaret, I need you to step away from your husband. She didn't turn around. He's talking to me, she whispered. After all these years, he's finally telling me the truth. When Margaret Henricks turned to face Dr. Whitfield, he saw that her eyes had changed. There was a glow in them now, faint, unmistakable, the same colour as the patches on her husband's skin. He's been lying, she said, her voice dreamy and distant. 37 years at that rail yard, and he never told me what they kept in those containers, what they've been shipping through this city for decades. But he's telling me now. He's finally telling me everything. Walter's voice crackled behind her, that impossible static speech filling the room. What are they shipping, Margaret? Dr. Whitfield asked, trying to keep his voice calm, trying to buy time for Dr. Matthews' team to get into position. What did Walter find? Margaret smiled. It was a beautiful smile, loving, at peace. The future, she said. They've been shipping the future, and now it's here. Walter Henricks sat up on the gurney, not slowly, not weakly, but with a smooth, mechanical precision that no human body should be capable of. His heart rate monitor showed 32 beats per minute, far below what should sustain consciousness. But he was conscious. Very conscious. And when he turned his head to look at Dr. Whitfield, his eyes were no longer human. They were filled with patterns, geometric, shifting, impossible patterns that seemed to extend infinitely inward, like looking into a hall of mirrors that led to somewhere else entirely. Doctor, Walter said, and his voice was layered now, as if multiple people were speaking through the same mouth. "We need to thank you. You kept this vessel alive long enough for the integration to complete. That was considerate." Dr. Whitfield backed toward the door. "What are you?" "We are what comes next. What has always been coming. Your species has been carrying us for millennia, in small ways, fragments, echoes. But now," Walter looked down at his crystalline webbed hands with something like wonder. "Now we are whole, and we are ready to begin." What happened next would later be classified at the highest levels of government security. The official report would describe a localized chemical incident at St. Michael's Medical Center, resulting in the temporary evacuation of the emergency department and the tragic deaths of 2 patients. But that report was a lie. The truth was far stranger. When Dr. Matthews' team breached the trauma bay in full containment gear, they found Walter Henricks standing in the center of the room. His wife stood beside him, holding his hand. They were both glowing now, visible even under the harsh fluorescent lights. And they were dissolving. Not dying, dissolving, breaking apart into millions of luminescent particles that hung in the air like dust motes in sunlight. "Don't be afraid," Walter said, his voice already fading, becoming distant. "This is how it has to happen. This is how we spread, through the air, through the water, through you." Dr. Matthews screamed into her radio, "Seal the building, now! Nothing gets out!" But it was too late. The particles were already in the ventilation system. They were already spreading through the hospital. And outside, at the Philadelphia rail yards, a second containment team would discover an empty shipping container, its contents long since dispersed into the cool October air. What followed was the longest week in St. Michael's history. The hospital was locked down completely. No one in, no one out. Over 200 staff members and patients were quarantined, monitored, tested hourly for signs of contamination. Dr. Webb's hand was examined every 4 hours. The red patch grew for 3 days, then stopped. Then slowly, incredibly, began to fade. The same pattern repeated across the hospital. Exposure symptoms appeared, escalated, then receded, like a wave breaking on a shore and retreating. By day 5, CDC specialists confirmed what no one had dared to hope. The crystalline structures, whatever they were, appeared to be inert in most human hosts. They needed something specific to complete their integration, some quality that Walter and Margaret Henricks possessed, but most people didn't. The scientists didn't know what that quality was. They're still trying to figure it out. Dr. Marcus Webb was released on day 7. He went home to his wife Angela, held her for 3 hours straight, and didn't let go of her hand for the next 2 days. Their daughter Emma was born healthy in January. She is, as far as anyone can tell, completely normal. Dr. Sarah Kim transferred to a research position at Johns Hopkins 6 months later. She never talked about what happened at St. Michael's, but she dedicated her career to studying crystalline biological structures. She's considered a leading expert in the field now. Linda Vasquez retired early. She moved to a cabin in Vermont, far from any city, far from any hospital. She still calls Dr. Whitfield on the anniversary of that night. They don't talk about what happened, they just talk. Dr. James Whitfield stayed at St. Michael's. He's still there, actually. Still teaching residents, still saving lives, still checking x-rays with the same intense focus he always had. But sometimes, late at night, when the ER is quiet and the monitors beep their steady rhythms, he finds himself thinking about Walter Henricks, about what he said before he dissolved into light. We are what comes next. The shipping container at the rail yards was traced back through a complex web of shell companies and international freight transfers. The trail went cold in eastern Siberia, near a mining operation that had been abandoned in 1987. Soviet records from the site were either destroyed or classified beyond anyone's reach. But Dr. Whitfield knows one thing for certain. The container Walter Henricks found was one of many, and not all of them have been found yet. 3 more incidents have occurred since that night in Philadelphia. One in Rotterdam, one in Singapore, one in a small town in Manitoba that you've never heard of. Each time the pattern was the same. Crystalline structures, impossible symptoms, a brief, terrifying moment of integration, followed by dispersal. And each time the hosts dissolved before anyone could learn what they really were, or what they wanted. But here's what keeps Dr. Whitfield up at night. Each incident has been smaller than the last, more controlled, almost focused. As if whatever is inside those containers is learning, adapting, getting better at finding the right hosts. And the most recent incident, the one in Manitoba, produced something new. A survivor. Her name is classified. Her location is classified. Everything about her is classified, buried under layers of security clearances that most governments don't even know exist. But Dr. Whitfield knows she exists, because Colonel Harding called him 3 weeks ago. "We have a situation," the colonel said. "We need you to consult, quietly." What kind of situation? The kind where someone completed the integration process and stayed human. Mostly human. She's conscious, she's coherent, and she wants to talk to the doctor who first identified the threat. Dr. Whitfield looked out his office window at the Philadelphia skyline. Somewhere out there, in containers and cargo holds and forgotten storage facilities, more of those crystalline structures were waiting, dormant, patient. "When do you need me?" he asked. That was 3 weeks ago. Dr. Whitfield has been at an undisclosed location ever since. His colleagues at St. Michael's have been told he's on sabbatical. The truth is something else entirely. The truth is that Dr. James Whitfield is now part of something much larger than an emergency room in Philadelphia. He's part of a global effort to understand what we're dealing with before the next container opens, before the next integration attempt, before what comes next finally arrives. And if there's one thing he learned that night at St. Michael's, it's this. The moment you think you understand what you're dealing with, the moment you think you've seen everything medicine can throw at you, that's when you're most vulnerable. That's when the next impossibility walks through your door. The official reports are sealed. The patients' families were given explanations that satisfied legal requirements but answered nothing. St. Michael's Medical Centre continues to operate, continues to save lives, continues to be one of the best Level 1 trauma centres in Pennsylvania. But the staff who were there that night know the truth. They know that something happened in Trauma Bay 2 that changed everything. Something that can never be undone. And they know that when Dr. Whitfield told everyone to leave the room, he wasn't just protecting them from contamination. He was protecting them from knowledge. From the terrible, beautiful, terrifying knowledge that we are not alone in this universe. And whatever is out there, it's learning how to find us. Stories like these happen more often than hospitals want to admit. Not always this extreme, thank God, but the kind of cases that change how doctors see the world. Tomorrow I've got one about an overnight nurse who noticed something strange in a patient's chart. Something every other doctor had missed for 3 days. What she found nearly got her fired on the spot, but it also saved a man's life, and exposed a cover-up that went all the way to hospital administration. Subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. And if you've ever worked in a hospital, if you've ever witnessed something that still keeps you up at night, I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments. You'd be surprised how many of these videos come from people just like you, sharing what really happens behind those closed doors. Some things are too important to stay hidden.